They told the judge I mistook the pantry for the bathroom, that I forgot my own address, that I called my grandson by the dog's name. They said I was incompetent on Tuesday. By Friday, I was sitting in the back row of that same courtroom in a borrowed sweater, watching the bailiff roll in a television so everyone could hear what my daughter-in-law and her brother bragged about when they thought I was sleeping. The only thing wrong with me that week was a rough winter cold, and their conscience. I recorded everything, from the forged signature to the toast they made to my dementia. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from. I am 71. My name is Richard Hale. I am a grandfather, a widower, and until last month the rightful owner of a faded blue house at the end of Cherry Maple Lane with a porch swing that still groans in my wife's rhythm. I have arthritis in my hands, a blood pressure cuff in the kitchen that never reads the same number twice, and a penchant for catching the kind of head cold that turns lungs into paper bags. But I am not confused. Not addled. Not lost. It began with a cough. The kind that folds your ribs inward and leaves you staring at the ceiling at 3 in the morning, counting the seconds until the next wave. The house felt colder this winter, or maybe I did. I had the kind of fever that makes the plaster breathe, and I could not keep food down. I worried the cold would put me in the hospital, the way a deep winter did 2 years back. But I stayed home, stubborn, wrapped in the Afghan my wife knit the year before she died. On the third day, my daughter-in-law arrived with 2 paper bags and a smile that showed no teeth. Everyone at church is sick, she said, sweeping into my kitchen with the air of someone who had been invited. I brought you bone broth and ginger. David said you were not picking up your phone. David is my son. He builds wildfire breaks for a living, which means when a line of fire looks like a mouth about to swallow a town, he and his crew are the ones who carve a gap where flames have to quit. He was out of state on a long contract, 3 weeks at a time, the kind of work that eats cell reception and daylight both. He has a son named Liam who thinks I hung the moon, and a wife named Madison who never quite forgave me for not selling my house to fund their second bathroom remodel. I tried to speak and coughed instead. Shoo, she said, her hand on my forearm, not to comfort but to guide. We are going to get you well. We have to be realistic, Rich. At your age, these winter illnesses can change things. We had the shape of a decision made elsewhere. She set the paper bags on the counter and pulled out a blue binder with plastic sleeves. The cover said Wellness Plan in a font that tried too hard to be friendly. What is this? I asked, voice made of gravel. A plan, she said. Simple steps. Structure. She flipped to a page with a checklist. Wake time. Medications. Food schedule. You have been losing track of things. Last week you left the garage door open all night. I drove by and saw your mower practically begging to be stolen. I forgot once, I said. You forgot the stove last month, she replied, without looking at me. You told Liam to bring you the silver hammer. Do you remember? She smiled then, like she had sealed a point in an argument. I remembered. I had told my grandson to bring me the silver hammer. It was a joke from a song we used to sing. We had laughed. She had not. She poured the broth into a pot. It smelled like chicken and pity. You need someone staying here at night, she continued. Someone to make sure you take your medicine, to help you with the house. My brother Bryce works with seniors now. He is very good at this. He can help with paperwork and appointments. He knows all about these situations. I stared at the binder. I do not need help with paperwork, I said. She watched the stove flame like it was a campfire, like I was a story she had told before. "Rich," she said, voice soft. "I know you do not want to worry David, but he is not here. He cannot see how you are really doing. And I am worried the cold has affected your thinking." She finally looked at me, and there it was. Not worry. Calculation. The next morning, the house changed under my nose. The locks were rekeyed while I was in the bathroom. My landline went dead for repairs I had not called for. The wireless password in my head no longer worked. The new router was a white rectangle with a name printed on it that was not mine. The book of checks I kept in the drawer under the stove went missing, along with the stamped envelopes I had addressed to pay the property taxes and the water bill. A young woman started sleeping in my guest room. She said she was here to help at night. She wore scrubs that matched the binder. Medication time, she would chirp, wristwatch beeping. "Any confusion today, Mr. Hale?" I let the questions run over me like rain. I was busy. On the second night, when the house nurse went outside to smoke and Madison was on my porch telling someone on speakerphone that I was declining, I pulled my old tool bag out from the back of the pantry, where the broom handled the door like a stubborn student. There is a hollow under that shelf. My wife used to hide Christmas presents there. I used it for something else. If you open a thermostat made before the good plastic years ended, you will find a cavity behind the guts where an old man's nerves and a little machine can make quiet friends. I had bought 3 pocket recorders in a chain pharmacy 15 years ago when a contractor tried to charge me twice for a roof. People talk differently when they think you cannot hear. I had 1 recorder left, wrapped in the bandana I used to stop the tool oil from staining things. I slid it into the thermostat's hollow, set it to voice activation, and checked that the tiny red light gave me that bug-eyed blink that says I am on, old man, I am on. Then I waited. It is not easy to look foolish on purpose. It is not easy to be still while people rearrange the map of your life with sticky notes and a ballpoint pen. It is less easy when you are sick and every breath feels like an argument you are losing. I ate the bowls they brought me and hid the pills under my tongue, then spit them into the dirt of the plant by the sink when they turned away, watering a pot of ache with a tea they insisted was calming. Calming tea is a sedative with a cardigan. After the second cup, my legs had opinions. On the third day, her brother arrived. Bryce was the kind of man who wears a suit with no socks to show he has nothing to hide. He carried a leather folio and a smirk he had washed and folded. "Richard," he said, gripping my hand for the count of 2. "I am so glad to finally meet you. I am a care consultant. I help families make good decisions when someone they love is no longer safe living alone." "I am not alone," I said. "Exactly," he replied brightly, and pulled out a stack of papers. They were not papers. They were hooks with signatures at the end. A new power of attorney form, pre-filled with my name and hers. A draft petition for temporary guardianship. A letter from a neurologist I had never met, recommending a full cognitive workup, given clear signs of impairment. A copy of my bank balances I had not printed. "Where did you get that?" I asked. "You must have left your computer open," he said. "No worries. We are here to protect you." They use that word the way thieves use gloves. Madison hovered at the edge of my vision, her hand on the back of my kitchen chair as if it were a leash. On my refrigerator, my wife's grocery list magnet still held her handwritten reminder in blue ink: lemons, rice, coffee, birdseed. The last thing she wrote in this house was birdseed. "Sign here to show you consent to evaluation," Bryce said, tapping a line with a pen that clicked too loudly. It is standard. You will go see Dr. Kerwin tomorrow. He is excellent. He specializes in seniors like you. He had already wrote the date. I think I will wait for my son, I said, voice low enough to get caught on the counter edge. Madison's nails pressed crescents into the chair. David is fighting fires in Nevada, she said. He cannot come back for this. Then I will wait, I said. She looked at Bryce. He smiled at me like a waiter with bad news he was about to call good. Richard, he said. You do not have to worry about this. Madison is your family. She has your best interest at heart. This is just to keep things moving. Let us not make this more difficult than it needs to be. The nurse coughed behind him. The monitor on my wrist beeped like a bird trapped in a jar. I picked up the pen. My hands shook because of the fever. Because of the cold that was chewing on my lungs. Because my muscles had lost the habit of strength after nights of bad sleep. But the shake looked like something else to people who came hoping to find exactly that. I wrote my full name, slanted, smaller than usual, on the line that said consent to evaluation, and not on the line that said power of attorney. Bryce flipped the pages so quickly you could have missed the difference. He did not. He knew exactly what I had not signed. Tomorrow, then, he said. I will pick you up. Do not drive. I will not, I said. They left me his card, a rectangle of whiteness that made promises with its font. After they left, I coughed until I saw a little red behind my eyes and sat on the floor until the room stopped moving. I fished the plant saucer out from under the pot with a fingertip and watched the clear liquid there catch the kitchen light where it softened to amber. I put the saucer in a plastic bag and hid it in the trunk of my car, behind the jack, under the rag I use for oil. When the house slept, I listened to my own walls. The recorder light blinked its insect testimony. Late the night before, the binder's owner had found her way to my kitchen with a phone pressed to her ear. Can we get a temporary in 2 days? Madison's voice, low and urgent. Yes, ex parte. He is declining fast. He almost set the kitchen on fire. He keeps calling Liam by the dog's name. A pause. Ice clinked. Yes, we need access to the accounts. House first. If we list quickly, we can get over market. It is a seller's dream out here. Another voice, close to the mic. Bryce. The neurologist will play ball, he said. I have a referral fee. He needs warm bodies. He will give you the write-up you want. We will get the signature tonight, worst case tomorrow after tea. Something cold moved down my spine. Not fear. Confirmation's twin. They told on themselves for hours. They talked about my house like it was already on a website in a handsome gallery, with the papers that prove you own it filed neatly under someone else's name. They talked about my bank accounts like a pie cooling on a windowsill. They laughed about how easy it is to get a judge on a Friday afternoon if you use words like emergency and safety and vulnerable. They practiced what they would say to David to make sure he stayed away until the ink on the order had time to dry. By the time he gets cell service, it will be done, Madison said. They used my cold as a prop. They used my cough as a tool. There is a particular rage that comes when someone picks up your weakness like a crowbar. I slept in 2-hour pieces that week, but my mind stayed awake, making lists, drawing lines between boxes, ranking the order of the things I would need to do. I am an engineer by habit even when the project is my life. The checklist kept me upright when my legs did not want to be. Get proof of what was in the tea. Get proof of what was said in this house and in the car. Get a line to someone who does not live inside the walls of this plan. When they ask me to be confused, be worse than they expect. On the morning of the evaluation, I could hear my lungs before I could hear anything else. The nurse put a hand on my shoulder and told me to eat. Madison had made oatmeal herself, as if that made anything righteous. Just a few bites, the nurse said. I chewed like my body remembered how to be old in a way that would serve me. Halfway through, I felt the slow, soft blanket that is not warmth begin to climb my spine. I set the spoon down and made a small noise. I feel woozy, I said. Madison smiled. It is the cold, she said. It is the tea, I said gently. She stopped smiling. For 1 second. That was long enough to imagine the outline of her first fear. They loaded me into Bryce's car like a child in a heavy coat. He drove, whistling tunelessly through his teeth, eyes straight ahead. Madison sat in the front and narrated my life like a tour guide with a poor sense of the sacred. I put my hand in my coat pocket and touched the second recorder I had taped inside the seam, the one with the longer battery life, the one that does not blink when it listens. I had set it to start as soon as the door closed. You forgot the day of the week yesterday, Madison said. He called me and asked when Liam's birthday is. He has never forgotten that. I asked because I was getting his present, I said, like a man arguing with a television. Madison spoke not to me, but to the air. He will try to deny things, she said, for the record none of us could see yet. He makes up stories to cover the gaps. He is paranoid, Bryce added. It is common. They talked like that while traffic made the wipers tired. I watched the world go by through a fog I had not agreed to let in me, and tried to keep the pond of anger in my chest from rippling enough to make a mess. I coughed when the car slowed, and wondered how much of what was in my body had entered through a teaspoon. We did not go to a hospital. We went to a building in a business park with rooms that looked like every other room that ever pretended to be neutral. The receptionist had a smile that made no promises, and the chairs had vinyl that could not hold a story if you asked it to. Dr. Kerwin wore a tie the color of faded tomatoes. He asked me to draw a clock. He asked me to say the months of the year backward. He asked me to remember 3 words. The longer I sat, the slower my mind felt, not because I could not answer but because I was exhausted from an illness that did not care about legal proceedings. Science is real. So is a fever. Do you know the date? He asked. It is Tuesday, I said. Do you know where you are? A room that sells opinions, I said. Madison made a small, high noise. Bryce crossed his legs and wrote something in his leather book. Dr. Kerwin frowned. He is oppositional, he said, as if to the air. That is common. Oppositional, I repeated. Do you want me to fail? Would that make this go faster? He did not answer my question. I did not answer his, which was fine, since he had already decided that silence looked like proof. By the time we got back to the car, my head felt like it had lifted off my body and was floating somewhere 3 inches to the left. I closed my eyes and listened to their voices, raw and pleased. I recorded every word. Do not worry, Bryce said to his sister. We have what we need. He could not even draw a clock. He drew a perfect circle and wrote the numbers, she said. He argued. That will read poorly. He looks unreliable. And he is so thin. Bryce's voice softened into the kind of sympathy people use when they talk about a dog they do not plan to take to the vet. We will file the emergency guardianship this afternoon. You will have access to the accounts by tomorrow. We will put the house on the market Friday. I have a buyer, she said. Sight unseen. Of course you do, he replied. We will change the locks today. I have the paperwork ready for the title transfer. I will notarize it myself. He will sign when the tea kicks in. I wanted to open my eyes and ask him if he could hear himself. I did not. I coughed instead, a terrible, human noise. Madison turned to me with her sweet schoolteacher smile. Almost home, she said softly. You will feel better after another cup. When we pulled into my driveway, the woman from next door was sweeping her front steps. Her name is Eleanor Delgado. Her late husband used to sit on my porch in summer and read the paper while our wives traded recipes they never ended up using. Eleanor has better eyesight than any bird I have ever met. She knows when someone is up to something in a way that does not require any mysticism to explain. She saw my face. She saw the way I sank. She watched Madison open my door like she was taking a child out of a car seat. She watched Bryce carry his leather book like a key that fit any lock. I coughed, harder. Madison pressed her handkerchief to my mouth like she was worried I would make a mess of her narrative. While Madison guided me toward the house, I stooped, slowly, painfully, on purpose, and withdrew the folded paper from my sock. It took 2 nights to write it legibly while my hands shook. It had 3 lines. Eleanor, call my lawyer, Harold Finn. Do not call my house. They are drugging me. They are taking the house. There is proof behind the broken bird feeder. I let the paper fall to the grass like an old man who has lost his grip on his grocery list. Madison did not look down. Eleanor did. She bent to pick up the note as if she were collecting a leaf to press in a book and did not lift her head until we had closed the door. The bird feeder had been broken for 6 years. Squirrels do not read boundaries, and Liam and I had made a game of watching them outread us. I had repaired the feeder enough to hold seed, but kept the crack. A month after my wife died, I had hollowed out the feeder's center and added a cheap trail camera whose motion sensor was too sensitive for human use. Birds came and went without tripping it. People did not. A week before the cold, I had moved the camera to the eaves inside the kitchen, pointed at the table where Bryce liked to lay out his papers. Old habits cannot unlearn how to anticipate a storm. That afternoon, a police officer knocked on my door. Madison went rigid beside the microwave. Bryce stood up so fast his folio hit the floor with a slap. Everything all right here? The officer asked, looking directly at me as if someone had taught him where a voice lives. Madison smiled too brightly. Absolutely, officer. We are caring for my father-in-law while he goes through a difficult time. The officer nodded slowly, eyes moving over the room the way a river moves over stones. Mr. Hale, he said. Up for a short walk to the porch. Bryce began to speak, then closed his mouth when the officer looked at him. We walked to the porch one shuffling step at a time. I held the rail to steady my legs and gestured for the officer to sit. He remained standing. Mrs. Delgado called, he said. Said you might need help. Said something about a lawyer. My throat tightened. Not from the cold. From the kind of gratitude that hurts to carry. I do, I said. I need to call him. I need to send him something. I cannot do that from my phone. He looked at the window and then back to me. I can escort you to your car if you have something you want to retrieve, he said. You can make a call from my vehicle if you like. It is recorded. Behind the officer, Madison stood in the doorway, her face arranged into concern. Bryce's smile had become carbon. The nurse shifted behind them, eyes on the steps as if she could find a way for the day to walk out of itself. "Please," I said. I moved faster than a man in my condition had any right to move. I say that without pride. Fear can make strange bargains with age. In the trunk, under the oil rag, was the plastic bag with the tea saucer. Behind the spare tire was a star-shaped wrench taped to a thumb drive and a prescription bottle, the feeder's memory card. In the driver's side door pocket, wrapped in a cloth, the third recorder, full of a week's worth of poison that did not belong in a human home. I handed the bottle, the bag, and the recorder to the officer like a man giving offerings at a strange altar. "Please take these to Harold Finn," I said, and gave him the address of the lawyer whose card has been in my wallet since my wife and I first wrote our wills. "Tell him to be ready at 2. Tell him the word is birdseed." The officer looked me in the eye. He nodded once. "And how are you, sir?" he asked. "Sick," I said. "But not like they say." He walked back to his car with the careful gait of a man carrying more than paperwork. Madison blocked the door when I tried to go back inside, then stepped aside when the officer cleared his throat. "Everything all right?" she asked me through her clenched teeth. "Not yet," I said. I spent the next hours playing the part they needed. I asked the nurse the time twice in 1 hour. I called the kitchen the bathroom once, and let them correct me kindly. I sipped water, not tea. I let my hands tremble when I picked up the pen to sign the permission for the neurologist to send his notes to the court, but I wrote a small, invisible line above the part where my name should be, a tiny stroke that would not show in a scan but would light up under certain light. Harold taught me to do that years ago when we had a different problem. It is useful to know the shape of your own signature by more than habit. At 1:30, the house phone rang even though it had been under repair since Wednesday. "Mr. Hale," the voice said. "This is Deputy Clark. You have a hearing at 2. Can you attend?" Madison put her hand on my shoulder. "He is not well enough to appear," she said. "I am," I said. "I will be there in 10, the deputy replied. Madison's smile came back with teeth this time. "I understand this is hard," she said in a voice pitched for the audience she imagined. "We are doing what is best. After the hearing, you can rest." "I will," I said. After. In the car behind the deputy, I coughed into my sleeve and tried not to let relief make me weak before I needed it. The courthouse smelled like cleaning solution and paper. The air was too cold for a man who had been fighting a fever. I shook hard enough to rattle the bench. Harold met us outside the assigned courtroom with a look that belongs to a man who has put on armor he thought he had hung up for good. "You look like the flu," he said. "You look like proof." "I brought you birdseed," I said. Harold's mouth twitched. "I know," he said. "We are ready." Inside, a commissioner looked down at us as if from a ship. On the right, a stack of papers with Madison's handwriting sat spined and upright. On the left, Harold had 3 items, a flash drive, a clear plastic bag with a saucer inside, and a blue binder he treated like it might explode. A clerk pressed the buttons that make other people's lives official, and my case number appeared on the screen. Madison spoke first. She talked about my cough like an omen. She described the burned coffee pot from last month as a wildfire I had barely prevented. She told the court that I had called my grandson by the dog's name and left my keys in the refrigerator. She said I forgot the grocery list. She said I drew a clock with the numbers all on one side. She cried when she said vulnerable. Bryce sat behind her with his cheeks arranged to look like concern has a color. He did not speak. His leather folio did not either. It just sat there like an alibi. When it was my turn, my hands shook so badly that Harold had to take the microphone and hold it near my mouth. "I am sick with a winter cold," I said, voice thin but not soft. "I am tired. I am not incompetent." Madison let out a sound here, some combination of pity and triumph. Harold held up a hand without looking at her as if he were swatting a fly. "I have been given substances in my tea that make my mind slow," I continued. "I have proof of what is in the tea. I have proof of what was said in my home while I was sleeping. I have proof of a plan to take my house before my son can get back from his work, of an agreement to pay for a diagnosis, of a promise to forge, if necessary." "Objection," Bryce said, standing as if the word itself could erase a week. "Counselor," the commissioner said. "Sit down if you are not counsel." He sat. Harold stepped to the small wooden island where the television sat. You do not think a rented television can look like a gallows until you see one next to your name. He inserted the flash drive with the practiced care of a man who has spent a career arguing with machines. We listened to my kitchen speak. We heard Madison's voice telling someone that she had a buyer sight unseen, that the house would be listed Friday, that they could not wait for David because the market did not hold space for sentiment. We heard Bryce tell her he had a referral fee to a neurologist, that he would notarize what needed to be notarized, that I would sign when the tea kicked in. We heard the nurse ask whether a second cup was really necessary, and Madison say he needs to sleep. We heard their laughter when the house was quiet, when they thought only the old man's cough was listening. The kind of laughter people save for when they have practiced the speech about doing this with a heavy heart so often their mouths need to do something else. When the recording of the car played, it was worse. "By the time he gets cell service, it will be done," Madison said, and the room shifted in that small, collective way a space does when an insult lands inside it too close to someone's own story. Harold lifted the plastic bag with the saucer inside like a priest with a holy thing. "This is the tea," he said. "We have not had it tested yet. We will. We ask the court to order a toxicology screen. We ask the court to order that no one in this room but my client may prepare his food." Silence is loud when you press it against paper. The commissioner leaned forward. "Mrs. Hale," she said, voice level as a yardstick. "Do you contest the voice on those recordings is yours?" Madison's mouth opened and closed twice. He is confused," she said. "That is not an answer," the commissioner replied. Bryce stood, then sat when the clerk coughed. The commissioner turned to Harold. "Mr. Finn," she said, "file your motions. Temporary restraining order is granted. No one moves money. No one lists or transfers property. No one changes locks. No one administers medication not prescribed by Mr. Hale's primary care physician. Mr. Hale will be evaluated by a neutral neurologist selected by the court. This court will not tolerate coercion or fraud. Sheriff's deputies will oversee the collection of Mr. Hale's personal devices and files and will return them to him today. Mrs. Hale, Mr. Bryce, do not speak. Counsel will speak for you if counsel you have." "Your Honor," Harold said, "one more request." He gestured to the blue binder. "We ask the court to review the wellness plan. It is not a plan. It is an instruction manual for control." Madison found righteous indignation then. "I was trying to help," she said. "He is declining. He is not safe. He does not even know." "Mrs. Hale," the commissioner said quietly. "Sit down." On the courthouse steps, the winter sun made my fever sweat mean something other than illness for 1 minute. The deputy returned my keys, my old phone, my dignity in small, careful handfuls. "Sir," he said. "Do you want an officer present when you return home?" "I want a lockbox on my front door and a court order taped to the glass," I said. "I want a copy of the order inside the medicine cabinet. I want to sleep in my bed." "You will have that," he said. Madison did not look in my direction as she left, which is an art form she will not be practicing for the next while. Bryce stared at the courthouse brick like he could still convince it to take his signature. In 2 weeks, a detective would visit him at his office and ask him how he had notarized a document he had never seen me sign. In 3, the neurologist would receive a letter from the medical board that would make him sweat in a way a tie cannot hide. In a month, my will would be updated to include a clause that disinherits any person who files for guardianship without cause. You can say a lot in a few sentences when you have stared at your kitchen table and listened to people try to steal your life. That afternoon, my son called from the side of a mountain where the wind tried to eat his words. He had borrowed a colleague's satellite phone when he came down from the fire line. "Dad," he said breathless. "What is going on?" "I got a message from Harold that." "I am all right," I said, and then I was not. My voice broke, and the cough came, which is a strange way to cry. The sound scared something out of me I had been sitting on since Tuesday. "I am sick, but I am all right." 2 days later, David was home. He stood in my doorway like the boy he was when his mother died, except his beard had gone a little gray at the edges and his hands had callous maps no one gives you unless you earn them. He hugged me gently, the way a man hugs another when he is angry at the air and careful with the body that is in front of him. "Liam is with Eleanor," he said, and smiled like the direction of the world had changed back to something that included his child's laugh in its architecture. "He is making a bird feeder out of a milk carton. Says he is starting a business. Says you are his partner." "My cut is 20%, I said. 15, he replied, automatic, and we both laughed, which frightened my lungs and calmed everything else. The weeks that followed did not undo everything that had been tried in my kitchen, but they did restore something I had been told I would not get back. My house was my house. The nurse left. The locks belonged to me. Madison learned the taste of silence in a courtroom. Bryce learned what happens when paperwork gets held up to light. The neurologist learned that patients keep receipts. I learned that the old man you think is confused might be an engineer writing a list in his head while his body loses a fight with a virus. My contact with my grandson became mine again, not filtered through his mother's phone. We ate toast with honey and pretended it made my cough better. He showed me how to use a recording app on my phone as if he were teaching me a secret, and I let him, because the look in his eyes when he is instructing the world is something you should not interrupt with your pride. I spoke at the senior center 3 weeks after I got my wind back, sitting on a chair they put at the front like a throne for a man who did not want to be king. I brought the blue binder. I told them about the tea. I told them about the saucer. I told them about the recorder with a bandage wrapped around it like it had done something brave. I told them about the bird feeder and about Eleanor and about a deputy who understood that sometimes the first way to help a person is to look at his face and ask him a question with no answer already lodged behind your teeth. I told them to make lists. I told them to write down account numbers. I told them to tell one neighbor where to find the thing that becomes everything when the door opens and someone with a smile says he is there to help you put your life in order. I told them that words like vulnerable and safety come cheaper than soup when they fall out of the wrong mouth. Later, when my lungs finally quieted and the house took its shape back, I sat on the porch where the winter sun can find you even when your bones think they are hiding. I watched my grandson pour seed into the new feeder he made, his tongue doing that little sideways thing his father's does when he concentrates. He looked up at me with pride so large it had to hold on to his ears to keep from falling off. "Do birds remember who feeds them?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "They do." He nodded, satisfied. Then he leaned closer. "Mom is in trouble, right?" he whispered, like the feeder could tell on him. "She is," I said. "Some kinds of trouble help a person learn. Some kinds make a person smaller if they do not. We will see which kind this is." He thought about that, the way children do with their entire face. He does not belong to the part of this story that hurts, and I will use everything I have left to keep it that way. He went back to the seed, spilling some on the porch with the careless generosity of a child who trusts that there will be more where that came from. I took a breath and did not cough. The sky above our small piece of the world was ridiculous in its blue. You can forget how to name a color when you have been looking at the same room for days. You can forget, and then remember in a way that feels like being forgiven. That night, the house was quiet except for the sound of a washing machine and the hum that old refrigerators do when they are keeping your milk safe from the ambitions of the future. I stood in my kitchen, hand on the thermostat that still held a recorder that had done its work, and felt a gratitude so strange it bordered on new. I am not grateful for what was done in this room. I am grateful for what this room did. It listened. It held. It told the truth. When we went back to court a month later for the longer hearing, Harold brought a different binder. In it were photographs of my kitchen table, a lab report that listed the sedative found in my tea, the chain of custody log for the saucer, a transcript of the recordings, and a letter from my doctor, who had not wept but had looked at me in the way a mother might when I told him what had been slipped to me in a cup I did not want. The commissioner listened and wrote and then spoke. "Petition denied with prejudice," she said. "Protective order granted. Custodial interference not allowed. Elder abuse charges referred to the district attorney. Civil penalties preserved." Madison looked down at her hands. Bryce stared at the wall, which had not changed its mind. I watched their faces as if I were taking a measurement. On the way out, a man in a suit I did not know asked me if I had advice. "Do not leave the people you love alone," I said. "But do not confuse love with ownership. And if you think you might one day find yourself in a room where someone says the word guardianship like it is a favor, put a recorder in your thermostat." He laughed, then stopped when he saw I had not. I slept well that night for the first time in a long time. Not because everything was fixed, but because the parts that mattered were no longer for sale. In the morning, I made oatmeal, my way. I brewed coffee so strong a spoon could stand up in it if you dared it. I walked to the porch with my mug and sat on the swing that still moves as if my wife just stood up from it and went into the house to get the honey. The feeder was busy. A pair of goldfinches argued about something invisible and important. A robin did the small, furious dance robins do when they feel they have been wronged. Eleanor waved from her step. "Birdseed," she called. "Birdseed," I answered. Later, after lunch, Liam came over with a paper bag and a grin that has caused more mercy in my life than anything a judge could order. He pulled out a small, square object wrapped in newspaper. When I unwrapped it, I found a plaque cut from a thin sheet of cedar. He had burned letters into it with one of those pens that smell like smoke and patience. "Do not underestimate the old man," it said. "He is recording everything." "When do we hang it?" Liam asked. "Now," I said. "Right now." We put it above the kitchen doorway with two screws that did not match. The plaque looks down at the table like a kindly old warning. If someone ever asks me where I learned to fight back while I was sick enough to fall, I will point to that silly little cedar square and say, there. And to the bird feeder. And to the neighbor who reads the ground. And to the memory of a woman who wrote the word birdseed in blue ink and put it on my refrigerator like a small, ordinary oath. There is a thing that happens in the middle of the worst day when you decide to hold still just long enough for your enemies to confess and then move faster than your body says you can. It is not strength. It is not wisdom. It is the kind of stubborn that keeps a house from being paper. I would like to tell you I found it easily. I did not. I found it because my cough would not stop and because someone said I could not be trusted with my own mind. So, I trusted it on purpose. And when the judge asked if there was anything I wanted to add to the record before we left that day, I said, yes. Press play again, and we listened one more time to Madison's voice lift in a toast over the sound of my sink. To quick decisions, she said. To the house. To the accounts. To his dementia. Every person in that room looked at me then, and I smiled with the small, steady smile of a man who is tired and alive and ready for his tea, plain, no honey, no sedative, thank you. Because I had recorded everything, from the forged signature to the toast they made to my dementia. 1 month later, the house remembered how to breathe without watching the door. The additional court session had come and gone like a storm that leaves the air strangely clean, and the papers that followed were the kind that end arguments rather than begin them. Orders with seals. Signatures that meant something. Consequences written in numbers, dates, and verbs that did not ask how you felt about them. Madison took a plea. The clerk read the terms the way you read a recipe you've made too many times. Attempted exploitation of an elder, conspiracy to commit theft by deception, and administration of a sedative without consent. She received 6 months in county, 5 years probation, full restitution, a permanent no-contact order with me, and a prohibition against acting as anyone's fiduciary for the rest of her life. Family court will decide what her motherhood looks like, that is not my bench to sit on. I did not look for her face when they led her out. Some endings are meant to be read, not watched. Bryce stood straighter than his circumstances. His notary commission was revoked, publicly and permanently, the way you pull a nail that has bent once too often to be trusted. He pled to falsifying notarization and conspiracy. He got 90 days inside, a year on house arrest with a bracelet that reports the truth without needing to be asked, community service at an agency that counts hours one by one, and fines with more commas than his business ever saw. He will not be advising seniors again, unless you count sweeping floors where they walk. Dr. Kerwin did not come to the final hearing. His letter arrived instead: Board of Medicine, summary suspension, consent order, remedial coursework if he wishes to petition for a limited license 5 years from now. The district attorney kept his name in a separate folder. Professionals earn their own shadows. I am told a civil suit grows in that direction like ivy. I do not water it. My part is finished. The night nurse testified and then disappeared back into a life I hope is simpler. The judge's notes called her cooperative. I remember her hesitations more than her watch beeping. We all get to pick the sentence that follows our names. Hers might yet be kinder than the one she almost helped write. David moved his tools back into my garage and his worry out of my kitchen. He does not speak Madison's name inside these walls. He texts with lawyers and school counselors and makes lists the way I do now, short, numbered, folded in half and put in a wallet. He sleeps hard. When he hugs me, he takes care not to carry me like something breakable. It is the gentlest correction the year has offered. Eleanor brought lemon bars and a copy of the stamped order like both were medicine. We sat on the porch, backs to the world, and watched Liam hang a new feeder he painted robin red. He asked if the sign we made for the senior center, the one that says Birdseed Fund in letters fat enough to be believed, would help other grandfathers. I told him yes. He wanted to know by how much. I told him we measure that kind of answer in doors that stay locked when they should, and open when someone you love knocks. Justice came down hard and exact, like a carpenter's square finding a corner true. It also came with a taste that was not sweet. I live in my house. My name is still on the deed. My mind is still mine. These are victories. And yet there is a small room in the heart no order can restore, the one where a son and his father should be able to say, we, without tasting smoke. We do our best. We leave Madison's absence where it belongs and do not let it track footprints across the rest of our day. On the kitchen threshold, the cedar plaque Liam burned for me hangs slightly crooked. I refuse to straighten it. The words are level enough. Do not underestimate the old man. He is recording everything. Sometimes I catch my reflection in its soft shine and feel a shiver of gratitude for the ridiculous decisions that turned out to be necessary, a recorder in a thermostat, a note dropped like a leaf, a saucer in a plastic bag, a neighbor who reads the ground. I keep the blue binder in the cabinet above the kettle. It still says wellness plan on the front, but the pages inside are not a leash anymore. They are a map, account lists, phone numbers, a copy of the order, a one-page sheet titled If You Get Sick and Someone Smiles Too Much. The last tab says Birdseed. Harold laughed when he saw that, then stopped because he knew I had not meant it as a joke. Some afternoons the house hums exactly like it did before anyone tried to rename it, and the swing keeps my wife's rhythm, and the birds quarrel over a line only they can see. Other afternoons I feel the chill of what almost happened climb my spine as if it remembered the route. On those days I boil water, steep plain tea, and watch the steam write gentle messages against the window. I am not grateful for what they did. I am grateful for what I learned, late as it came, that stubborn can be a kind of love when it is pointed the right direction. The legal mail has thinned to invoices, copies for the file, receipts. The ledger is balanced. The lockbox code changed last week and I did not forget it. Liam spilled seed on the porch today, and I did not tell him to be careful. We have more where that came from. 1 month later, I can say this without shaking. They were punished, and it was severe, and it was just. The price was high. It is not the ending I would have chosen, but it is the ending that keeps a house from being paper. At dusk, when the light goes blue and the thermostat clicks like a clock that has nothing left to prove, I touch the cedar plaque as I pass and let the bitterness do what winter does, harden the ground so spring can find it. The birds come late, then stay. I pour my tea plain. I sleep.
Hello everyone, and thank you for watching. I truly hope you enjoyed listening to the story as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you did, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel to help support the creation of more stories like this. Have a great day or evening.